You'll find at the bottom the Q&A on the right-hand corner is you can just pop your questions in for Debbie and Karen as they're talking. I'm sure lots of questions will come up. So pop those in there and we'll have a portion of Q&A following their presentation and discussion. And there's also a chat if you want to look for any information about how to link to the San Diego History Center or to link over and purchase a copy of this book of Karen's or any of Karen's books from warwicks.com. And with that, I think that's all the housekeeping. I'm just going to head out and let the two of you start talking. So without any further ado, over to you two.
Thank you very much, Sonia. We're very pleased to have a partnership today with Warwicks and introducing Karen to our wonderful community. I would like to first, this is our first joint event with Warwicks from the History Center's perspective, and I'm very pleased to make that partnership today. Again, my name is Debbie Cushman-Parrish. I am a vice chair of the History Center's Board of Trustees. I am also a very proud cousin to Karen and her sweet husband, Phil. Hello to both of you today, cousins. I'm going to go through a few slides here. So if you can see your other screens, you all should be seeing a shared screen from me now. For those of you that do not, let's see, I'm trying to advance here. Here we go. For those of you that do not know about the San Diego History Center, we are a nonprofit donation-based museum. We were established in 1928, and we preserve and promote the history of the San Diego area. My family came to San Diego County in the 1860s, and my love of history and genealogy drew me to the History Center. We have an extensive collection of programming, and so please check us out online, or please come down to the center. We are now open. We have two museums, our amazing center in Balboa Park, and the Junipero Museum in Presidio Park. We have a very large collection of digital media, including document archives, photographs, as well as a research library with books, biographies, and a fabulous research staff on site. I was pleased when Karen told me that she utilized the History Center for her research of San Diego, which brought MILLIE's world to life. A very proud moment for us all. Speaking of our fabulous research staff, they have pulled a few photographs of Mission Beach so that I may set the scene visually for you all, which will lead us into an introduction of MILLIE by Karen. This is a map of San Diego in 1940 that Karen used. My, how we have grown in 80 years.
Can we point out Mission Boulevard there?
And that's where I'm getting to. As
Great.
Said, you can really see how low and skinny Mission Beach is. And that is found here. If you can see my cursor in the upper left corner, here's our strip of Mission Beach. This is an early picture of Mission Beach in 1916. As you can see, only one structure is in sight. MILLIE takes the electric railway, and here's a picture of one in 1924. As a side note, John D. Spreckles, the sugar, air, and land developer, established the system in 1892, if you can believe that. Here we have Charles Lindbergh's Spirit of St. Louis flying over South Mission in 1927, where you can see the roller coaster in Belmont Park, which actually opened on July 4th in 1925. Another shot of the railway in Mission Beach, also in 1927. Here's a closer view of Belmont Park in South Mission in 1932. You can still see very much undeveloped. Mission Bay Bridge, 1935. Mission Beach is starting to develop neighborhoods in this picture from 1936. This would be similar to where I believe MILLIE is living. Another view from the other angle. Here are our fine Navy sailors exiting a streetcar in 1937. and buying candy apples for 10 cents. This is the boardwalk in 1939, starting to get a bit crowded now. And I loved this. This is the plunge in 1940. Now we are approaching the time period of MILLIE. Check out the longboard in 1942. This reminded me a little bit of MILLIE's friends that she meets along the beach. Fun in the Sun in 1946. And here's a wonderful shot of Mission Beach as it extends into Pacific Beach and onto La Jolla in 1947. Look at the growth now. Karen, would you please introduce us to MILLIE?
Oh, of course. I've now written 10 books since I turned 50. And this is the first one that began not with a character or with a plot or an event, but with a place. I've heard about South Mission, Bayside, for over 50 years now from my husband, the Cushman here. And I loved that place and I wanted to set a book there. He describes it as being something like a small fishing village on the Bayside. The ocean side, at that time, was more crowded, was more popular, was noisier. But on the other side, 2 blocks away from the ocean, or 3 maybe, was the bay. Before it was dredged and turned into a fancy world-renowned resort, it was just this little fishing village with fishermen, Portuguese octopus fishermen, the few houses, a few people, serene, quiet. The tides came and went regularly, quietly. The sun sparkled on the water as Phil floated in his rowboat, reading comic books and eating peanut butter sandwiches. They had, let's see what it says on the water. So I wanted to write about this place. And in order to do that, I wanted to put a character there who really needed that quiet, that solitude, that simple, natural life. Somebody who would benefit from all of that. So sad, anxious, fearful MILLIE McGonigle was born. She was definitely in need of comfort. The book set in 1941. MILLIE had lived through the struggles of the Depression. Her father lost his job. She had a sickly sister who got all the attention. Grandma died, and then Pearl Harbor came, December 7th, 1941. War came right to MILLIE's footsteps. War then and always, I think, brings many changes, and she had a hard time coping with that. In order to find some measure of control, she invented what she called the Book of Dead Things, in which she drew pictures of dead creatures she found on the beach and listed names of people who died that she had heard about or read about, that she felt like she could handle that amount of problems and struggle and death. And it served her pretty well for a while. But she discovers finally that not all change is bad, that some of the changes war brought were a new friend, a new crush, a new way to find ease and comfort in her life. So as the world changed, MILLIE found strength and courage in the natural world, in simple things, the tides that came and went, uncovering a whole world there under the water with crustaceans and insects and the birds who fed on them that would be covered over again in a couple of hours by the tide. There was the peace of the small waves on the bay and the familiar fishy smell of the mudflats. And she began to embrace a certain amount of change, though at the very last line she finds that some things never change. So that's all I'm going to introduce Millie with. So I'm hoping that you have lots more questions. I brought visual aids and different things to share with you. And I think we should move on to questions. Yes.
All right. Wow. I could look at even more pictures of
Yes.
the time of Millie from the History Center, Debbie. Thank you so much. That it's just
Welcome.
living for us, fortunate enough, some of us are maybe not living here right now, or zooming in, but for those of us who are living here right now or have lived here, it's just so fascinating to see what that world of Millie and just the past was like. And I know the
Right.
San Diego History Center is an incredible resource for just that kind of thing. But jumping into Millie's world and talking about the book, Karen, I would love to, you touched on it just briefly, if I may just go back to it, that you wrote this book, and I see that the hardcover that I have came out in 2021. So we now have the paperback just recently releasing, which is exciting. That this took place at a time, and you touched on the polio, when kids had that sort of unknown virus hovering on their consciousness, which is, I don't think you planned to be releasing this during a pandemic, but for kids to have also that are children or we're always having this kind of unknown virus of the COVID floating around on the back of their consciousness as they're trying to have a first crush or, go through these other milestones in their life, being worried about it and how that played into it when you were writing, maybe understanding the pandemic that was coming.
I hope that young readers will find inspiration in Millie as she discovers what it is really that can ease and comfort her, and leaves off with the dead book, that there are ways that young people can handle these scary things that are beneficial, that are nourishing and nurturing, and I hope that they find that in the book.
And it seems that she is dealing with fear and death on a few levels with the first death from the war, Dwayne. I don't know when you made the decision to include that in the book, to make the war real. I don't know, maybe you would like to, I don't know when you decided to add that, because there's a lot for this group of kids to handle.
Yeah, yes. Well, there's a lot of death in funny ways, like there's the dead dog that they find on the beach, and Icky Fribble's brother who gets killed in the war, and I think that our lives are surrounded full of death now with the worldwide news networks. We know when somebody gets killed 10,000 miles away, or when a bomb goes off somewhere that could be here, but it isn't, so that the quick way we can get news from all over the world, I think sometimes contributes to that it makes me, I'll tell you, a little fearful and anxious when I see all of that. And I imagine it, of course, more so for young people. So it's not like that I wanted the book to be morbid or spooky, which some people call Millie's book. I think it's her mother who calls it morbid. But it's her way of handling all of the death around her. And so I hope that her way inspires other people. I keep looking at you instead of at my camera, I think. I'm not.
I do the same thing.
Because you're right there, right?
Well, it looks like we have some question in the that we'd like to ask you. We have one: how do you craft, from Deborah Schmidt, authentic characters? because your characters are very real. I kind of compare them to the great Beverly Cleary in terms of
Oh, what
how,
an honor. Yeah.
well,
Thank
they're very full-fleshed, and they have pathos, and they have these challenges, but they're also very humorous and very real to what kids are dealing with in their lives, in a humorous way. Deborah Schmidt would like to know, how do you craft authentic characters?
Well, to begin with, like 112 drafts going back and looking at them. But I think that just looking around at people and finding different quirks from different people, or how somebody walks, or does something that's a little different, or how somebody can't stand this particular smell or that particular sight, and to just collect them in my head and can get to them when I need to. I also think about the characters as I write them. This one is sad. What's making him sad? What can be done about it? How does he handle it? How does he look when he's sad? How does she look when she's fearful? What makes this person happy? That all those little details, even if I don't use them in the book, will round out a character, make that character more flesh and blood. And I find that the most fun part. I'm not big on first drafts, but going back and I once used a description of my stories anyway, as like an artist putting clay on a wire amateur. That I don't carve from something big to small. I start with something tiny and just keep adding these pieces of clay and building it up to a person, a character. That's my favorite part.
I love that analogy. I think about the author Brian Selznick, who talks about that same thing. He always takes snatches, like a magpie. It sounds like you're both like magpies,
Yeah.
taking little pieces from and collecting them from people. We also have a question from an attendee. It says, as a San Diegan and a kidlit writer, I'm sending you much love to Karen for her support of SCBWI. That's the Southern California Book Writers and Illustrators. Did I get that correct?
Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators.
Thank you so much. I always get that acronym wrong. And your grant, she will keep trying. Congratulations on your latest book. Your San Diego depictions are so rich. Thanks in part to all the resources at the History Center. What is your advice for balancing interesting history with fictional plot? Excellent question.
I think they call that history at times info dumps. That's what we have a tendency to do. I got on the bus that was at the corner of Mission Boulevard, which runs for 10 miles from here to there, and you can take, and it costs $0.25. That kind of thing. That the thing to do is, if you're going to put in a lot of history, then take it out. That often what's more important is, how does it smell here? How does the breeze feel on this character? And then enough of the little history to act as a base. But I think that most people tend to put too much history in. And I love history, and it's not boring to me, but I think that readers don't come for that. They're not getting a master's in history. They're coming for the story. So enough of the history and the place to enrich the story is what we're looking for. And it is a balancing. And I think, again, it's done by draft after draft. Red pencil, circle this. Do we really need this? Is there another way to talk about this history without saying in 1432 this happened? Yes. So all of it is process. Yeah.
Fantastic. Debbie, did you have any other questions for Karen? Because I know you had some interesting things about the family backstory with Karen's husband as the kind of the inspiration for this book, the starting place. I don't know if there are any stories that got left out.
Well, he probably won't like me saying this, but he's a bit older than I am. So when I knew them, they had already then, when I came along, I should say, they were already living in Point Loma. But I heard stories from my aunt Fran and uncle of all the wonderful times that they had in Mission Beach, and of course Phil and his brother Eddie, Eddie Debby. Growing up down there and really being boys. In those days, we could just run and just don't be late for dinner, but you could explore all day long. And reading through the book, I really felt at times I was reading about Phil and not necessarily about Millie, because those family stories were coming back for me. Also growing up here, I had similar stories growing up in Point Loma, but not a lot of stories to share per se, but I love and am so eternally grateful to Karen for writing basically Phil's backstory of his childhood in Mission Beach through Millie and her experiences. And I think this has just been a fabulous addition to our San Diego history. Right. And I do appreciate the anonymous attendee bringing to light the History Center. Very nice to point that out. We thank you very much. I do want to ask Karen, in that vein, I know you have some unusual resources and you might have brought some along. So I'd like to tee it off to you to share with us some of the things that you used in bringing us Millie's world.
All right. I happen to have things, so I'm glad you brought that up. I used a lot of just history books, Daddy's Gone to War kinds of books. I used Peg Carrott's memoir of the time. She, a young children's book writer, had polio. So that gave me a lot of information about that. I then found this whole series of books. Oh, this is the one I brought. It's called Images of America. You have a bunch of these at the History Center there?
We do. We have a lot of series, different subject matters and locales.
Yeah, these are really wonderful. This one is surfing, and there's one about Mission Beach.
There is.
Chock full of pictures. They're wonderful. So these helped me a lot. Once I did some research at the History Center, I found this special reprint of one of their journals, War Comes to San Diego, and it really helped me. Again, it helps to see pictures, but also to hear about people who lived through it. Online, there are a lot of these oral histories of people who lived through war coming, whether it's in San Diego or anywhere in the country, that came to everybody. Once I had more details and knew what I needed, I was able to find some very interesting things on eBay. This one is an official guidebook for the San Diego Zoo from 1947.
Wow.
Yeah.
Karen, that's fabulous.
It is fabulous. And I found also on eBay, Know Your Warplanes, which was put out by Coca-Cola.
Well, and you depicted that well, setting the scene of what it was like. And I do remember, even when I was a child, the air raid sirens going, and we had to practice.
Right, get under your desk.
Exactly right.
I had to do that. And this helped because Millie becomes an airplane spotter.
Right.
Yes, so.
Thank you.
Sure, that's what I'm here for. Ask me another question, somebody.
I was just going to say, adding on to that too, when you were talking about the air raid sirens, Debbie, that you capture that in the book with Millie finding things to do to kind of take control of how she finds the pamphlet on things you can do for the war effort, and the kids doing the collections of fat in the neighborhood, which I found so endearing and humorous, but also kids saying, yeah, what can I get? That's right. What can I do so I feel like I have some input into this big thing that's happening in my world.
Right. Yes, I can do something about it. And she even gets her 5-year-old brother involved, and they go collecting scrap metal. And they learn to knit. Millie and her brother, not very well, but Me Too, the little kid down the street, turns out to be an ace at knitting. So they used to knit washcloths for soldiers. Now, why they had knitted washcloths, I don't know, but that's what people on the home front did. They knit blankets and sweaters and washcloths. So there were ways for everybody to participate. There is in the front here a quote. It's there somewhere. There one. There's the Colonel Oveta Culp Hobby, whoever she was, had this quote and inscribed on the World War II memorial. This was a people's war, and everyone was in it, which was including 5-year-old Pete. And everybody had something to do, a place to be, a role to fill, to help win the war.
And I think we really feel that in this book and other books of this genre, this historical fiction period, is that it was a war that everybody participated in some way, and different than other wars.
So. Yes, and certainly different from wars we get involved in now. You know, It's not like the whole country bands together.
Karen, was there, in creating Millie, was there anything that surprised you or inspired you?
Well, let's see. It didn't surprise me because I had Phil to watch. You know, that helped a lot.
Well, that's a surprise all in of itself.
Constant, yes. The Book of Dead Things was a surprise. I didn't know that was going to come, but I had her at some point drawing the picture of the dead octopus.
Yes.
At the beginning.
Yes.
And where would she draw this, and why would she draw this? And that led to the idea of her wanting some way to handle all of this death and war and all of the suffering. And that led to putting it in a book. Her grandma, for her birthday, right before Grandma dies, she gives Millie a notebook, a purple notebook that her grandma wants her to draw a lot of things about how good life is and things that bring happiness and ways to handle difficult things and all of that. But Millie tears the purple cover off and turns it into the Book of Dead Things. So that surprised me as I dealt with that. A lot of the history that I found surprised me. Now, of course, I'm blanking. I can't think of what I was.
Well, I was just going to mention that thing that you mentioned about things being surprising to you, or that part that with the Book of the Dead, really, that kind of detail really gave Millie's character, and I see that it surprised you, the character sort of evolved in that way, but you had so many details like that that put the reader really in Millie's world and made us understand her. I was thinking of also how she was interested in the natural world. So she was observing and drawing these specimens, as well as I remember when she was showing Rosie, her new friend, about sea glass, who of course we living here right by the ocean know what sea glass is and where it comes from, but explaining to her the detail of how sea glass is made and that the reds and the pinks are the ones that are so rare. These are all the things that kind of give us, I'm fascinated with how you put those details into someone's character.
That's the 120 drafts kind of thing. You know, they're walking on the beach. What will they find? What will they see? What will they smell? And then something comes on, and I think, oh yes, that beautiful glass we used to collect on the beach. So I'll add that, and I'll write about that and what that means to them, and the change that bottled glass turns into something else, turns into these beautiful misty colored objects. And so there's more change going on in the world now.
Well, I want to make sure we get a few more of these questions
Yeah, I
here.
see Ken Q.
Yeah,
and
we've got, we have from Jeb, and I'm going to say this name wrong, Baki,
Baki.
Baki,
Baki.
Baki. Did the experience during World War II for San Diego's families prove to be different in your understanding? This might even be for Debbie as well, than other cities due to the large military presence that we have
Oh,
here?
I'm sure the large military presence changed San Diego enormously, and it has never gone back to. You can't find any sleepy fishing village on Mission Bay any longer. And it turned San Diego into a world-class city as opposed to this small former mission on the ocean. What was I going to say? I was going to say something before we veered off this way. Can't remember.
Crap.
Sorry, it'll
All
come.
right, but it will come back to you. So let's
Let's
get
with that
another one of these
question.
questions in here. Karen, from Judy McSweeney. Karen, will you be writing more books with San Diego as the location?
Well, I haven't thought about it. I have to come up with a character or an event, a reason to do San Diego. The reason for this book, it was obvious that that's had to be where the book was set. So I'll see what, I've never written a sequel, and I've never even written something that takes place in exactly the same area or the same setting. So I'll have to think about that. Yes.
Maybe we could
gonna-
have I'm sorry, so maybe we could have a hand raise of how many people want you to write a sequel to this book.
Not me.
There's your
No,
answer.
I didn't raise my hand. What I was going to say about the changes to San Diego, or how was the war coming different to San Diego and other places? Absolutely, because of the location. I mean, very close to Pearl Harbor. And for a long time, there were rumors that the Japanese were already here, that they were coming. So there was this constant fear, and it was immediate. It wasn't, oh, the war might come here someday, or, it's tomorrow. They could be here tomorrow. And in fact, as it turns out, they could have been. That if you read about that, the history of Pearl Harbor, that we really were lucky that they turned around, or they didn't come any further when they had the Japanese, when they had the chance, because the West Coast was totally unprepared for any kind of war or invasion. And there are a lot of books about that too.
Let's see. Ann Collins would like to know, what was your path to publication? Did you have an agent for your first sale? I guess that means your the first sale of the manuscript.
Absolutely, I had an agent. I wrote the book, and people, in fact, some people from the SCBWI and others would say, oh, well, it sounds like, this is Catherine Colberti, Medieval Diary of a 13-year-old girl. That sounds interesting, but first novels don't sell. You'll never get an agent. History is dead. Kids aren't interested in history. Books about girls are a hard sell. So I thought, I'm going to write this anyway. And Phil said, if we have to, we'll self-publish it. I said, okay, I'm going on. I'm going to finish it. And he had written a book, Constructing the Self, Constructing America. And he had gotten an agent for that. So I said, will you ask your agent if he knows anyone who handles children's books? Maybe we could see if I can get somebody. So Jim, the agent, said, have her send it to me. I'll see who I can think of. So I sent it to him, and right away it called back and said, I'll take it. And he lived in the same apartment building as the editor-in-chief of Clarion Books. So he hung out in the lobby and rode up and down in the elevator looking for her when they would cross in the elevator. And when he found her, they were locked inside together in the little elevator thing. And he said, I have this book I'd like you to read. So she took it and gave it to Dinah Stevenson, who became my editor. And they took it right away. And the joke around the place was when you couldn't find, what was her name? The editor-in-chief, Dorothy. When you couldn't find Dorothy, people would say, oh, she's probably hanging out in an elevator somewhere looking for somebody with a good manuscript. So that was really easy for me. It's not your typical experience at all. It's miraculous almost. Once again, Phil played a big part in that, even though he didn't live in medieval England, but he inspired me to send it to his agent. Yes. Yeah, so that was my experience. And so the same publisher has took them all until my editor had to resign. And so I moved over to Random House, Knopf after that. But up to that point, Dinah and Clarion Books had managed to handle all 9. Yeah.
And that is the quintessential elevator story, because in entrepreneur school, they hone it into you. Have that elevator pitch. Have that elevator pitch.
Right.
And I've never actually heard anyone tell a story where they used that elevator pitch in an elevator.
That's true. That's a perfect example of why you need to be ready. He hung out for a long time. I understand.
Well, we have some more questions here in the thing. What advice, you kind of touched on that a little bit, but what advice, Deborah Schmidt would like to know, do you have for older aspiring authors?
First of all, if you have a manuscript, you might consider sending it in for the Karen and Phil Cushman Late Bloomer Award at SCBWI. It's only open to writers, unpublished writers over 50, because what I'd like to do is, of course, inspire them. But I think we expect a lot of ourselves. I hear from women who say, I'm 40 years old and I have 4 children. I have a part-time job and my husband needs this and we do that, and I want to write, but at night, I'm just so lazy. I can't. Come on, lady, look at all that you have on your plate. You can't do it all. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe you don't have the mental energy, not only the physical, but I tell people to give themselves a break. And when things are a little clearer, in our case, it was when my daughter went to college. Suddenly I didn't say, well, it's 2:30 in the morning. Where is she? Or does she have her lunch money? Or, what time will the bus be back? All of that was cleared off, and I had room for another young woman besides my daughter, who turned out to be, at that case, Catherine, called Bertie. And patience and kindness to yourself go a long way. But also, I tell them to read a lot. There are people who would say, I want to write a children's book, but they don't know what a children's book is. Is it a two-word picture book, or is it nonfiction about sharks, or is it a fantasy? They don't know what a children's book is. So read a lot, hang out at Warwick's, and read practically every book on the shelf. Pick it up and look at it. Look and see who publishes it, because that will help you when the time comes if you write something in that vein. See how long it is. You can't write a 120-page picture book. It's not going to happen. No. So look for all those details, and what they'll do is bring things to your mind. And I tell young people, and I can tell older people too, look around, pay attention, listen. Everything becomes your material, and things will happen. When I talk to kids, I use the example of Legos. One Lego is just a little red plastic block, but you add this one and you add this one and you add that one, and you can make a car or you can make a castle. And that's how building a story is. It's this idea, and the way that person smells or sounds, and you start putting all of these together. That's at the very early stage, and you build an idea for a book or whatever it is that you're looking to do. But it's not sitting down and saying page one and starting with the first word, and going through that there's all this preparation and there's all this listening and reading a lot and writing a lot. Write little pieces, little paragraphs or introductions. I think of little boys like my brother. We had a basketball hoop in the backyard. And if he wanted, he couldn't go and try out for the Lakers first thing like that. He had to spend years and years throwing that dumb ball against the hoop, over and over and over again. And I think that's what people who want to write need to do those practice things. They're not going to start out on an NBA team. They're going to start out throwing the ball against the basketball. What is that called?
Backboard.
Yes, my boy over here.
Karen, I know, proud family moment, and I'm going to brag a little bit. You did win the Newbery Award.
Yes, I did.
What was it like to win the Newbery Award?
Oh, listen, I have this good story about that. After Catherine Called Birdie was published, I didn't pay too much attention to any kinds of awards. It was my first book. I was brand new. I didn't have any connections, really. So I didn't pay too much attention. And one morning, in January, I think it was, our telephone rang at 5 a.m. So Philip picked it up, and I heard him say, "Do you know what time it is?" And this person said, "Rah, rah, 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 rah." And I said, "Who is it?" I thought it must be something bad because it's so early in the morning. And he said, "She says she's some librarian." So I said, "Oh my God, hand me the phone." So he did, and she said, that Catherine Called Birdie had been nominated and for a Newbery Honor Book, which is not the whole medal, but is an honor book. So that was exciting, and we were celebrated, but he was humiliated. He thought he had really fumbled that phone call. And he was sure of two things. He was sure that my next book was going to win the whole enchilada, the whole award, and that he was going to handle that phone call much more suavely. So this time, the next year, I had a book up the next year.
Yeah.
This time we paid attention to the date and when the Newberries would be announced. And once again, the announcement came from the East Coast. So they called, I don't remember what time, 4:35. They call because they want to announce it to the press at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So it was at 5 o'clock or before that. Anyway, so the phone rang. He had been practicing picking up the phone. Hello, hello. He saw Dick Van Dyke do something similar on his show. So that's how Phil practiced. And so the phone rang, and he reached out to answer it suavely, and he knocked it on the floor. And it bounced under the bed. And I'm shrieking, get the phone, as if they're going to say, well, she's not answering, we'll give it to somebody else.
No.
So finally, this hand came out from under the bed with the telephone in it. And it was someone named Mary Beth Dunhouse telling me that the Midwife's Apprentice had won the Newbery Medal. And I brought it to show people.
Yay.
There you go.
Somewhat of an idea, as I was telling everybody, it's too heavy there's no hole to hang it from a chain. It's too heavy to wear around the neck. It's not gold, it's lead, probably. I don't know what it is. So it stays in its little box on my desk. And
excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Great story.
Yes,
That is,
isn't
at
that
least
a-
with an Olympic medal, they give you a ribbon and,
Yeah,
you
right,
can
right,
wear it.
that's right. This will not, this just, it's this.
I think we
But
might
I'm
need to
not
talk
giving
to
it
the
back.
Newberry Committee
Okay.
for when you win your next one.
Yes, I had expected after I won 2 in a row, I thought, well, I guess this is the way it works. Every year we'll get an early phone call. But that's not true. It doesn't happen that way. I was very honored with what I got, and I'm not giving this back, even though it's cumbersome.
We had a question, I think that's for Debbie. Where did the children that lived in Mission Beach, close by area, those areas go to school? Very
actually, Mission
specific.
Beach Elementary School.
Yeah, there was
So
one
right
there.
there, established very early. So that's where Millie would have gone. I
That's
believe
where Phil went.
That's where Phil went, exactly. And actually, my mother, who also lived there at that time period, earlier, actually started her elementary school at Mission Beach Elementary. So right on there before everybody moved to Point Loma.
Then after that, they went to Pacific Beach Junior High, right?
That's correct,
Yes.
right.
And then moved on to
Right.
Mission Beach High.
That's right.
Mission Bay
And
High?
Mission Bay High.
Mission Bay
I
High
went
is
to
still
those
there?
Mission Bay High dances, absolutely. Yes.
But Mission Beach Elementary is no longer there, right? That hasn't that property been,
Right, it's gone.
Yeah.
right? The neighborhood.
Well, I don't know where
that-
they go to school now. Do you know where they go to school now? No, they go somewhere else. Probably in Pacific.
We'll see if someone puts that in the chat. Maybe someone
Okay.
knows the answer to that question. This,
Sonia,
we
maybe
have
you can answer for the, Susan Heck has one about books for purchase. Are there signed books? And you can talk about that, what Karen is.
Yeah, Susan, thanks for asking that question. We actually have books that you can go onto warwicks.com, and I think there's a link right in your chat, but Karen has so kindly made these lovely book plates, which are in the store. I forgot to bring one to show the screen, but she signed them, that come with every book that you get. So you get Karen's lovely signature, so you can have an autographed copy, which is a treasure.
Very nice.
I know that I treasure mine.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone
And I think, go ahead.
just sent in and said Pacific Beach Elementary now. So
Okay,
that clears that up. Yes.
Very good.
that's the one over by Trader Joe's. Across the street from Trader Joe's, I think, yeah. I navigate by Trader Joe's. It's
Oh, there you go.
There was no Trader Joe's when we were there, just Food Basket.
Oh, food basket. Oh, indeed. Oh, my goodness. Yes.
And I think that we had some exciting news about one of your books, that I think Debbie was going to
yes.
share.
Yes,
Let the cat out of the bag.
I will. A young woman named Lena Dunham, when she was 13, decided that Catherine Called Birdie was her favorite book. And when she grew up, she was going to make movies, and she was going to make that book into a movie when she was 13. So I heard from her like 15 years later. And she said, after she was an established filmmaker, she wrote and produced Girls, the series on HBO for several years. She's had several movies in the theaters. And she contacted, actually, I guess she went through with the agent, my agent, and said, I want to make this into a movie. Karen interested? Well, yes, Karen was interested. So the movie, they were starting to film it in May 2020. And that may sound like a familiar date to you. They were going to take Phil and our daughter Leah and me to England, to Shropshire County, to see the filming. They were filming at a castle, and they had built this little town and a manor house. It's unbelievable, and we were going to be there. And because of COVID, they had to shut down everything. And when they opened it up again a couple of months later, it was a closed set. You couldn't have anybody not involved in the movie there. So we lost out on that, but it would have been fun to see it. Especially since the movie has been made, and I've seen a copy, but it was not probably quite finished. And the sets are incredible, and the settings and the costumes. Oh, it's just fantastic to look at.
So excited.
Now, there is a caveat for people who have read the book. This is her movie, definitely her movie, and not my book. But I read something where Ann Tyler said that's the way to handle it. It's my book and her movie. Yeah. So it's produced by Amazon. It's going to be available on in the theaters September 23rd.
Right.
And on Amazon Prime, October 7th.
Right.
And what looks like now, September 17th, it will be featured at the Vashon Theater on the island.
Very exciting.
Amazon has bought out the theater, and I can invite family and friends to see the movie, which is terrific.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, very proud moment.
Yes, that's great. So I know people will enjoy it. It's just not exactly my book. That's
I feel like I have to make a trip up to Seattle in September suddenly.
September 17th, let me know. I'll make you, supposedly they're going to send me an invitation that I can email to everybody. So let me know if you're going to be in the neighborhood.
All right. My friend up there has been begging me to come, and now I think I have an extra reason. Judy McSweeney writes in the question and answer, does the signed book with bookplate come with a ribbon, unlike Karen's award? We can make that happen.
One. Yes. Sonia will come up with ribbons.
If you want to wear her bookplate, we will provide a ribbon.
Right.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's very exciting. And as Ann Tyler said, you have to let the book go, but it's amazing to see that something that you created, and many of your books, I mean, I read those two books in particular when I was younger. You just feel like so close to those characters to see how much you've affected someone. Yeah. That you've created something so real. And I really feel that way about Millie. I think you've struck that same note where I feel like I know her. She's a very real person. Even if she was based on your husband, I still think of her as...
Not entirely, yeah. Yeah.
Now, my last question, we're getting close to closing out, but one of my last questions was, Millie has a kind of a nemesis. Did your husband, an arch enemy, okay, did your husband, that neighborhood group of kids, was that based on any real scraps and back and forth pranking?
Anything about a specific person, an arch enemy. I just know that the family moved to Mission Bay because his father had terrible allergies, and the doctor said, you move there or you die, and live there where the fresh breezes come and not the allergy filled or the pollen filled stuff from the canyons, which blew the rest. So they moved there, and they were quite different from most people who lived there. If they there were some, there were some rough kids who lived there. They were more educated and articulate, and they were Jewish, all of which did not stand them in good stead with a lot of the rougher kids were there. So there were problems and fights, but there was no arch enemy of the terrible level of Icky Fribble.
What a great name.
Great name.
I just love that name. So fantastic. And I was wondering where then the follow-up question to that is, where did these names spring from?
Sometimes they just pop into my head. I knew he wanted to be something like Ricky or Mickey because I could call him Icky. And he went through about 20 last names, but when I came up with Fribble one day, and it's not all at the same time, it's over the years that I'm working on the book, I thought, that's perfect. He's got to be a Fribble.
A Fribble.
Well, even just Millie McGonigle. I mean, that is just a lovely mouthful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have probably just a couple more minutes before we finish. If Debbie, if there was any other questions that you had, I'm looking in the Q&A and I think we've touched on most things.
I think my last thing, thank you, Sonia, is do you have a favorite character? I mean, I don't, Millie is probably your obvious choice, but are you surprised you have a favorite character?
I do have a favorite character.
Okay.
I have a younger brother.
Yes.
So I was very fond of Pete. I love Pete.
Great answer. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
He's so innocent and charming and gullible and sweet and
What a great homage.
loves
to your brother.
Millie and she loves him. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
So you don't have a little sister?
No, no.
Okay, because I thought that was an interesting how you hit the nice tone with the older sister, little sister, that little bit of dissonance as you're trying to separate and it was really, I thought for sure you had a little sister.
No little sister. Yeah.
Oh, just out of your imagination.
Yeah.
Well, this has been fantastic. I know that Debbie, you had some people you wanted to thank.
I just want, first of all, to thank Karen and of course Phil for allowing us to bring Karen to San Diego. She was trying to do a big event here locally. And of course we have, COVID to thank for that. But this is a wonderful opportunity. I just want to thank you, Karen, for all the research that you did. It's a wonderful plug for our fabulous museum. And, all the research that you did there. I'm glad to know our system really does work and look at, what you brought to the table with it. But thank you very much for joining us today and taking the time out to share Millie with all of us. Sonia, I'd like to thank you at Warwick's and your team, and Amanda behind the scenes, who's done a fabulous job with the questions. And I just think this is a wonderful new partnership, I hope, between the San Diego History Center and Warwick's, bringing more of these historical novelists, fact or fiction, to our wonderful community. I love Warwick's author events. I look forward to another one in person. But thank you very much, everyone. For
someday, maybe someday. And I'd like to thank Debbie and Bill at the History Center and Sonia and Amanda for doing this, for getting me online.
Yay!
They did that. It worked, right? And for all of your hard work and the wonderful participation. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to finally get this together and just get to listen to both of you talking together, and the backstory of your family is, thank you for inviting us into that, because that really makes this so rich and understanding where the book came from. And as we said, you can, I've noticed that Amanda's been putting things in the chat for information about the History Center if you don't already know about it.
Thank you.
So go on there and definitely check out. We can see they have amazing resources. And then also to get your signed copy of War and Millie McGonigle at warwicks.com. So this has been fantastic, and I hope we'll do something in person next time.
Great.
All right, I think we'll say goodbye to everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.